If you're not watching this video on your phone or your tablet, pull yours out for me, okay? Go ahead, I'll wait. The chip that's in there, the chip that's in here, doesn't matter if it's Apple Silicon humming away in your iPhone, or Qualcomm Snapdragon in your Android, or something else, Tensor, Exynos, MediaTek, that processor is an efficient ARM chip. That's not a guess, it's a rule. Except, wait a minute. This is a 2015 Asus Zenfone 2, powered by Android, and with, what is this now? Intel inside? Yeah. There's also this. The Dell Venue 8 tablet. When it shipped in January 2014, it was slick. I mean, this has got an 8.4-inch 2560 by 1600 OLED display. It runs Android and looks crazy thin. In fact, it was the thinnest tablet in the world when it shipped, but it's powered by an x86 Intel Atom? What the hell? Intel made x86 Android chips? Yeah, for a brief, weird moment, they did. And these devices are honestly really impressive, but here's the thing about these two. They're ghosts. They weren't the start of something revolutionary, they were the last gasp of a failed invasion. This was Intel's Hail Mary pass to get into the Android market years after they blew the opportunity to ship their silicon inside the one device that revolutionized smartphones forever, the original iPhone. And the story of how that happened, of how ARM ended up in basically every pocket while the undisputed king of computer chips got left in the dust, isn't just about power efficiency. It is a tale of genius, of hubris, and certainly one of the worst business decisions in modern history. I will spare you the 1970s origins of ARM at Acorn Computers. That's for another video, but ARM as we know it today begins in November 1990. It's a wild joint venture between Acorn, the chip manufacturer VLSI Technology, and a little company called, and I gotta make sure I get this right, Apple Computer. Apple invests $3 million in cash, VLSI throws in its tooling and expertise, and Acorn contributes its rather unique chip designs and 12 employees. And at Apple's request, the new company is christened Advanced RISC Machines. Yeah, Apple named them. And the first product to use a chip from this new venture is also for Apple. In the original PDA, Personal Digital Assistant, another term coined by Apple's then CEO John Sculley, and that of course, as we all know, is the Newton, launched in 1993. The Newton is innovative. It is way ahead of its time, but it's also a massive commercial flop, selling only 60,000 units in its first year. That critical failure leads to a very important realization. ARM will never succeed by betting on a single hit product. It needs a different playbook. So ARM won't build factories or sell its own silicon. Instead, the company licenses its technology for an upfront fee plus a percentage royalty for each chip sold in exchange for partnership and licensure. This unleashes, theoretically, a gladiator pit of competition where chip makers and foundries all battle to create the best, most customized chips for their clients. And if anybody wins, then ARM wins too. And that model proves its genius almost immediately. In the mid-90s, Nokia and Texas Instruments partnered with ARM to produce the 16-bit ARM7 TDMI for mobile phones, which, with over 30 billion units produced, becomes the most popular microprocessor ever made. Apple comes back to ARM in 2001 for the iPod, and that same year, Nintendo uses an ARM7 core in the massively popular Game Boy Advance. These aren't just gadgets, okay? They are culture-defining products, proving that ARM has the chops for the mainstream. So what's Intel up to during this ARM revolution? Well, they are dominating the PC, which has remained, up until this point in history, the most profitable market segment. They're killing it. But get this, they also have the most powerful ARM chips on the planet under their product portfolio. Huh? How? Okay, well, buckle up for this one. We have to rewind just a little bit. A mini computer pioneer, DEC, is bleeding money by the mid-90s. They have no real product portfolio, and they attempt to work with ARM in a last-ditch effort to create StrongARM, high-performance chips for set-top boxes and PDAs. Good technology, good chips, but unfortunately, it doesn't really move the needle. And with billions of dollars in losses, months from insolvency, they do what any desperate, dying tech company does. They sue Intel, claiming that Pentium infringes on their patents. Intel, of course, countersues because, well, that's what you do. And here's where things get interesting. The 1997 settlement between these two companies gives Intel DEC's semiconductor fabs and, crucially, the StrongARM business for about $700 million. That's right. As of 1997, Intel buys up the most powerful ARM designs in existence. Chips that run at 200 megahertz when most ARM processors are puttering along at less than 50 megahertz. And this scares the absolute hell out of Steve Jobs. Wait, what, Steve Jobs? Yeah, remember, Apple is still a major ARM shareholder at this point, and Jobs immediately, who has recently returned to Apple, by the way, sees a threat. Here's Intel, the company that has just absolutely steamrolled every competitor in the x86 market. In '97, they're certainly eating Apple's lunch. And suddenly, purchasing, owning ARM's crown jewel? That sounds real bad for everybody, right? Well, Robin Saxby, ARM's CEO, later recalls Jobs frantically trying to block the license transfer entirely.
Intel got the rights to the ARM license through that contract. And by the way, I had to get board approval on every deal. And I discussed it with Apple. And basically, Steve Jobs, sorry he's not around anymore, was not in favor of licensing this to Intel and tried to stop me doing it. And I spoke to him on the phone. And he said, "You're the chief executive of ARM, Robin. Who am I to argue with you?" And he approved the deal. So that's a little relationship I have with Steve.
Intel has the resources, the manufacturing prowess, and now the technology to completely dominate this emerging mobile processor market. So what does Intel do with this incredible advantage? They fumble it spectacularly. First, they rebrand StrongARM as XScale because nothing says we're committed to ARM quite like removing ARM from the name entirely. And then they get cute and they add their own proprietary extensions called wireless MMX. Basically, Intel is trying to create vendor lock-in. If you use these special Intel instructions, your software will no longer run on other ARM chips. The mobile industry, which has watched Intel's stranglehold on PCs for years, basically looks at this and says, yeah, no thanks. Oof. We've seen this movie before. By 2005, ARM's new Cortex-A8 is closing the performance gap on XScale. It takes years for them to get there, but they do, with companies like Texas Instruments and Samsung already establishing themselves in the mobile market with better integrated solutions. XScale is powerful, but it's power hungry, it's expensive, it's becoming dated, and crucially, it lacks the DSPs and baseband processors that phone manufacturers actually need and want. But here's the real kicker. Intel isn't really too bothered. They don't really care because they're in the early days of simultaneously developing their own x86 mobile chips, which brings us to around 2005 and the moment that changes everything. Steve Jobs, deep in development on his top secret phone project, goes to Intel's then CEO Paul Otellini and asks, "Hey, does Intel want in?" Keep in mind, at this point, Apple is already preparing to move the Mac from PowerPC to Intel. They don't really have much of a choice, but it is in Apple's best interest to order as much volume from Intel as they can, so building a new chip with them is an obvious partnership. Yet, in a decision that probably still haunts Intel's boardroom to this day, Otellini says, "No thanks." Now, the official story, one Otellini tells years later, is that it all comes down to money. He says Apple was just offering a price lower than Intel's forecasted cost to make the chip, and he just couldn't see the sales volume being high enough to make it profitable. But that's the PR version. The reality, as always, is way messier. First off, the timing is an absolute train wreck. Otellini has just become CEO in May 2005 and is in the middle of massive corporate restructuring to get Intel focused on its high-margin x86 business while cutting a bunch of underperforming divisions. The company is just frankly bloated, and the XScale business is hemorrhaging money. It's one of the worst defenders. Furthermore, Otellini is already planning to sell it. He's found an interested buyer, which he does, by the way, in 2006 for $600 million to Marvell. So why then would Intel commit to designing a chip for a brand new product using a technology that they are literally about to dump? They wouldn't. That part is understandable, but the second reason is more pure, unadulterated hubris on Intel's part. Let's be honest here. Intel thinks that ARM's a toy. They are absolutely convinced that their own upcoming low-power x86 chip, Atom, combined with their wireless tech WiMAX, will be the end-around strategy to conquer the mobile market. They've never taken ARM seriously, and they genuinely believe that they can recreate the Wintel monopoly on phones and make ARM cell phones obsolete. It is desktop thinking applied to the mobile world, one where there's frankly just no room for a partner like Apple. And finally, number 3, I think perhaps the least talked about, but maybe the strongest reason nothing ever came of this, Steve Jobs. He is famously secretive and especially wary of sharing information with Intel, the very partner that Apple, however reluctantly, must depend on. So Jobs is vague enough that for all Otellini knows, he's turning down some deal for a fancy new iPod variant, not a device that will fundamentally reshape computing. So, caught between a dying business unit and a fantasy of x86 dominance, Intel passes. And Apple, as we know, ends up going to Samsung instead, who agrees to manufacture a powerful new ARM chip for the phone. It's an SoC with an ARM 11 core running at 412 MHz, and it becomes the beating heart of the revolutionary new device that is the iPhone, launched in June of 2007. And as we all know, history dictates it to be an immediate, world-changing sensation. Uh-oh. But no worry, because as expected, Intel announces Atom in 2008 with all the subtlety of a marching band at a funeral. They've been talking about it for years. But here's the thing, it's still not ready, and while Intel is giving PowerPoints about the future of mobile computing, actual mobile computing is happening without them. The HTC Dream launches in 2008 with Android and a Qualcomm ARM chip. By 2009, there are dozens of Android smartphones flooding the market, all running ARM. The iPhone, running ARM, is selling millions of units quarterly. And Intel? Well, they're still in the lab, desperately trying to shrink their desktop architecture into something that won't melt through your pocket. It's not until 2010 that we see the first phone-specific Atom chip, codenamed Morristown. And Intel claims that it's so advanced, so revolutionary, that 3 of the top 5 smartphone makers will adopt it. But spoiler alert, they don't, because the chip gets canceled. Why? We still don't really know, but rumors at the time pointed to poor yields and lousy battery efficiency. It is not until 2012, 4 years after announcing Atom, 5 years after the iPhone changed the world, that Intel finally ships something to market. But the results are underwhelming, to say the least. Motorola, ZTE, and Lava sign on as partners for their first chip, but these are not really the LG and Samsung wins that Intel desperately needs. And the chips, well, they're not great, so they're relegated to low-performance budget smartphones. 6 years. 6 years after Apple, Samsung, and Qualcomm have cornered the market, Intel finally ships something compelling in January 2014. The Dell Venue 8 Series 7000, as it was known, as mentioned previously, when launched was the thinnest line of tablets in the world. I have got here at my desk model 7840, which came with 32 gigs of storage. All 7000 series models were running Android. The model number was based on your configuration, whether it was Wi-Fi and cellular, your color, your storage capacity. The base model, I believe, was Wi-Fi Black, 16 gigs of storage, and model 7830. Why Series 7000? Why 7830 as the base model? Who the heck knows? Only Dell ever will, and probably they don't know either. It was probably just input into some random SKU generator, and that's what came out. Okay, how thin are we talking here? 6 millimeters. To put things into perspective, the iPad Air, the first gen, had just come out a couple of months before, and it was heralded upon release as being insanely thin, and it was 7.5 millimeters. This is 1.5 millimeters thinner, and well, holy hell, that is crazy thin. Oh my gosh. Wow. That feels thin even by today's standard. I mean, here, let me grab my iPad Pro for comparison. This is my 2024 M4 iPad Pro. Came out a year ago. It is 5.3 millimeters thin. So you're only talking like just over 0.5 millimeter thicker for the Dell Venue here. This is insanely thin. I mean, this is crazy. Again, just for comparison's sake, I mean, here is my iPhone 16 Pro. It is significantly thicker than the Dell Venue 8. Wow, that's cool. This thing really is thin, and not just thin, it feels really nicely built. It's got this premium aluminum construction. Like the iPad, just feels solid. It doesn't feel hollow like many tablets of the era did. It feels expensive. And well, other hardware we got here is pretty simple. We've got a front-facing camera, and then there are 3 rear-facing cameras, 1 here and then 2 here, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But let's turn it on. Where's the power button? Here it is. Okay, the moment of truth. Is it charged? Is it dead? It has been a decade. Oh, nope, there we go. Okay, yeah, that's OLED, baby. I mean, look at those inky blacks. But I can already tell just from the boot sequence, one of the big criticisms against this display. The colors are just way too punchy. That blue is, they'll knock you in the teeth. That is Dell blue, let me tell you. English? Wow, I remember this old Android setup screen. This is fun. Scanning for networks. Okay, we'll log in with a very up-to-date and secure tablet. This is kind of interesting. It's super rounded down here, but then quite sharp up here. And you know what? I don't hate it because it looks nice and premium. It matches the squareness of the display, but then down here where you've got this big chin, it's more comfortable to hold. Ah, okay, sign into your Google account. Do I? I'm always scared to do this when it's very outdated and insecure. Sure. I will tell you that the touch responsiveness is not as good as modern capacitive screens. Okay. Oh my gosh. Look at this. Remember when you used to get this setting up a tablet and a phone? Holy smokes. That is something else. Okay. Dropbox, 20 gigs for 1 year with your Dell device. Do you think this still works? I kind of want to try it. Yeah, I don't think this worky no more. Okay. Thank you, says Dell. No, Dell, thank you. Finish. Wow, I remember that sound. That's a throwback. Okay, welcome. And we're up. And you know what? Oh, wow, that was a graphical glitch. I was gonna say, you know what? It feels pretty good. Let's try that again. There we go, that's a little better. We are dropping some frames, but not bad. Let's log into the Play services. See if I can get anything from the Play Store. Yeah, server error. They're like, Google's like, ain't no way we're letting you back in here. It's been too long. So we're gonna have to sideload APKs, which is a bit of a bummer. Wikipedia.org. Oh, Wikipedia game I just Googled. Well, it worked. Okay, all right. You know what? Oh man, am I gonna get this every time? Yeah, I am. Oh gosh. Okay, back to the safety that is Google. I need a non-HTTPS website, which basically those don't exist anymore, so that'll be fun. It's kind of weird that we're to the point in technology where I have a tablet that literally cannot basically do anything on the web. Can't log into Google Play services. I can't even find out where to self-sign a certificate so I can browse around the web, but it feels completely responsive and modern. Like there's nothing about, it's a little bit slow, but I mean, it feels like an iPad mini. It's really not that bad. What a pain in my booty hole. Wow. Look at that logo. It's been a while. That's the old YouTube logo. It's been a while. Speaking of Dell, there is an app on here called Dell Live Wallpapers. That is probably the worst 3D effect I've ever seen. It doesn't even match up with my accelerometer. It's like 10 frames per second. But let's navigate to what we're really here for. Antutu Benchmark, which we've sideloaded over USB because Play services don't work. And we're gonna go to my device, and this is where the goods are. We have got a Moorfield device running an Intel Atom Z3580 at 1.33 gigahertz. And if we scroll down, we'll actually see that it boosts to 2.33 gigahertz, which is bananas. This is not your grandpa's Atom. I mean, this is built on Intel's 22 nanometer process. This is at a time when ARM and ARM's foundry, so TSMC and Samsung, are still stuck at 28 nanometers. You gotta remember that back at this point in time, Intel had a real manufacturing advantage. They were the best fab in the world. Now, this tablet was paired with a not super amazing PowerVR G6430 GPU. It's fine, it's okay, not great. And well, apparently our CPU temperature is at nearly 300 degrees Celsius. Doesn't feel too bad on my fingers. That's clearly an error in the sensor. But everything suggests that the performance should be decent. So let's open up Firefox and run a browser benchmark, because this is really something where modern chips have just absolutely spanked old devices like this. Speedometer 3.1, we're gonna start running it on this tablet. We're gonna open it up on my phone. Speedometer, I bet we can finish it by the time this thing even opens. Let's see. 1, start test. All right, they're both going. I can tell you this much. The iPhone is a lot, well, the iPhone's already past it. Whoa, yeah, okay. Oh, it's done. 1.61. Yeah, that's a little bit slower than the iPhone 16. But you gotta remember, for the era, for 2014, this honestly wasn't bad. When benchmarked, it compared very favorably against the Snapdragon 801, often outperforming that SKU. Now, that was Qualcomm's worst chip they've ever made. It was very hot, it consumed tons of power, and the 805 came out very soon after as kind of an apology, but even against the 805, this Intel chip fared very, very well. It was certainly near flagship, if not amongst flagship performance when new. And I mean, nobody ever really talked about it. It was just kind of forgotten about, but it was impressive. Now let's talk about the gimmick for this tablet, because everything had to have a gimmick back then, especially in the Android world, and that was the camera, which, where is it? Camera. It's under the alphabetical list of C. Who would have guessed? Remember your photo location, that's GPS. Okay, check this out. So, I've got my primary camera right here, which I'm covering, but I've also got two secondary cameras, one on top and one on bottom. And the gimmick was what Dell at the time called RealSense. They were stereoscopic cameras that gathered depth information because they were slightly off axis. So you could refocus, recolor, and even measure, which is pretty cool. So let's try that. Oh, do you want to see tips on how to use the features? No, I already know. Ah, so that's depth snapshot. That's what I want. Okay, so now we can come back here and, yeah, you know what? I need a picture outside. I'll be right back. Oh, gallery. Okay, welcome to Dell Gallery. I got there, guys, don't worry. It was under Dell, not under Gallery. Okay, here we go. This is the business. Okay, I don't need your whole life story. We notice that your camera calibration is currently out of alignment. We'll fix this automatically as you take more photos, and the filters will become more precise. To speed up calibration, take 4 to 5 photos in a brightly lit area. I'm not really interested in doing that right now, so why don't you just zip it? Okay, so you could do standard kind of image photo processing, but see this? See how I'm adjusting the brightness of the tree at the front? This is using depth information. So not only could you do, like, if I come in here and say, let's see, black and white, for example, or I could change it by changing my focal plane. That's pretty cool. Okay, so if I say I want my foreground in focus, there you see the tree is green, but everything else is black and white except for up front here. Can I pinch the focus area? No, looks like not. So whatever it is at roughly the same focus distance will remain in focus, which I guess makes sense, right? It's not doing machine learning to figure out what is tree, what is not tree. It's just all stereoscopic kind of plain stuff. So whatever's in focus will be what's modified. I will tell you that this thing is getting pretty warm. It's not hot, but it ain't cold. Yeah, that one's done. We can measure that while the other one processes. Okay. Don't show me any more tutorials. I get it. Stop. Stop. How tall is my fridge? It is 6 foot 5'10", 6'2". Honestly, that could be right. It's definitely not 6'2" because I'm quite a bit taller than it, but that's not bad. Oh, you can save and exit. You can save your measurements into the photo. That's cool. So they're like annotated. So you could say, oh no, they show up though afterwards. You could send them to your contractor friends and say, look at me. So that takes quite a bit of resources. What I will say though is for being a 10-year-old battery, I booted this thing on with 96%. I'm only at 91. I set up the device, wasted a bunch of time trying to browse the web. I've taken several depth photos, and that's one of the things that this was actually praised for when it was launched, was that the battery life was excellent. So the battery was better than the iPad, it was better than the Nexus 7. It was the best battery life in any tablet. And I mean, look how thin it was. It's been a number of minutes and it's stuck processing the depth information for this photo. Well, That's RealSense. Curiously, RealSense did end up kind of becoming something. It spun out of Intel just earlier this year with a $50 million Series A funding round. They're doing the same stuff, stereoscopic camera-based vision systems, but they're targeting robotics and AI this time around rather than, dumb little tablets. Okay, so that's the Dell Venue 8. This thing was neat and all. It wasn't the device that wowed everybody, honestly. That would be this, the Asus Zenfone 2, which shipped a year after the Dell Venue and with the same processor. So what made it so special? Guess we should figure that out. Look at that, Intel inside. Isn't that so kooky to see on a phone? Wow. All right, so this shipped around the time of the Snapdragon 805, which you'll recall was basically a whoopsie-daisy, sorry about the disaster that was the 801. But it was still before the Snapdragon 810, which ended up just absolutely destroying pretty much anything else. So this, when it was launched, was still no slouch, but it was getting a little bit long in the tooth. So why the excitement? Why did people care about this phone? Well, the price. It was $299 in a world where other flagship phones were pushing $700. And a budget phone, this was not. It did have near flagship hardware in most instances. They did cut back a little bit on the screen. It was a 5.5-inch 1080p LCD. It was an IPS LCD, but an LCD, and that's in a world where other flagships had 1440p AMOLED displays. But what this thing had that basically no other flagship had, not basically, literally no other flagship had, was 4 gigs of RAM. This was the world's first smartphone with 4 gigs of memory, which is pretty darn cool. Now, it was criticized on launch for its plastic build quality, but honestly, I think it feels pretty nice. Like, it's very rigid. It doesn't feel cheap at all. And honestly, the brushed plastic looks really nice. It's kind of reminiscent of the HTC One M8 and M7 and various other phones. It's got exactly the same kind of bevel and curve and shape. Man, that was a good era of phones. I loved the One M8. It's gonna have the same miserable setup, I'm almost certain of it. Only Wi-Fi connection. Wow, that's nice. This was in an era where still some Android phones made you do weird stuff to activate the device before you could get in because they were carrier locked and everything. This might be carrier locked, I have no idea. That was one of the criticisms of this OS at the time. It ran Asus's skin of Android called Zen UI. It wasn't quite as crazy as TouchWiz or some of the other really heavily modified versions of Android, but it conversely was not unmodified at all. And it allegedly came with a bunch of bloatware. They have to hit that $299 price point somehow, I suppose. You might be wondering, how in the heck did they hit that $299 price point other than installing spyware and adware on the phone? Well, subsidies, baby. Intel reportedly took a hit of $100 to $200 per unit on the SKU, on the actual SoC itself, to penetrate the market at such a late stage in the game. And well, didn't really work out for them, but yeah, you got to do something. There's no point in signing into Google because this will not be modern enough. Well, this was a year later. It's possible that this version of Android is new enough that I can still get Play updates. Let's see. Google Drive promotion. 100 gigs of free Google Drive storage. Sure, why not? Can I get it? Redeem. Is it gonna work? I think I paid like $8 for this phone on eBay. So if it works, this is a great way to get free Google Drive storage. A lot less than a monthly subscription. Ah, the offer can't be redeemed. Check your network connection. They're not saying I don't deserve it. They're just saying, oh, okay, well, all my Google Drive files are on here, so that's a good start. Swipe down from the top to pull the share sheet down, and then 2-finger swipe down. Nope, that wasn't a thing on here. That's too bad. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh, stop. Let me just figure it out on my own. Friendly reminder. Hey, here's a friendly reminder. Go away. 4 gigs of RAM, well, 4G of RAM, 2.3 gigahertz processor, which is correct. It doesn't tell us that we have an Intel Xeon, but that's, I mean, not a Xeon, an x86 Intel Atom. Okay, so this is Android version 6.0.1, which is still supported by Google. Probably won't be by the end of this year, but we should have access to the Play Store. Heck yes, yes. Okay, so what am I going to get? This feels slower. I was downloading an app, I'll give it that. There is also a lot more bloatware on here. Like My Asus Service Center, Mini Movie, Mobile Manager, Quick Memo, ShareLink, Splendid, I don't know what that is, Supernote, Theme system update. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Does system update just open the settings? It does. So why have an icon for that? That's weird. Zen Circle, Zenfone Care, Zen Talk. Those are obviously ASUS things because it's Zen UI, remember? Weather, do it later, photo collage. This is back when OEMs oftentimes shipped their own default apps rather than use the Google ones available. So this is ASUS's calculator. Nice, cool, thanks. It's really good. It's way better than any other calculator I've ever used. Let's see our weather information. Are their APIs still up? Probably not. They are! Wow! Who are they using? AccuWeather. Thank you, AccuWeather, for never changing your APIs in 10 years. Okay, specifications. So we've got our Atom Z3580, 2.3 gigahertz quad core. It's a Silvermont generation CPU, and that is fun. Look at that, PowerVR 6430, which was not, to be fair, a super high-end GPU, but it wasn't as power consumptive as the Intel HD graphics were at the time, which is why you had the CPU from Intel, but then they went and found a discrete GPU that they could package alongside that was better suited for mobile usage. This screen is so dim. I literally cannot convey to you how dim it is. Those speakers are something else. Oh, look at that. I'm getting like frame per second. Yeah, that'll be the PowerVR, unfortunately. That's just not a great GPU. How's our speakers? Wow, truly very bad. Okay, here's the sitch. Because I don't have the latest version of Google Play Services downloaded, I basically can't open any of the apps that I've downloaded, but now, instead of updating through the Play Store, which is how they used to do it, they do it in the Settings app, and they're like, well, just go to Settings and update Play Services from there, but I can't because that was introduced in a later version of Android, and so what I've had to do is go download the version of the APK online, but I can't just install it through the phone directly. I have to use this APK mirror installer because it's a multi-part package, but it does detect that, hey, here's my file system, Android 6.0, supported architectures, x86, baby. And now I go to install package and I say, yeah. I watch this ad of this buffalo. Huge casino. A $5 billion grand jackpot. 5 billion what? Doesn't say dollar. Grand jackpot, 5 billion. Okay, 5 billion tokens. Oh my gosh, I didn't even touch that. Get away. It is tokens. It says no purchase necessary, but then it also says for entertainment only. What a scam. Who's to say? Let's check out my notifications. This shade is not bad. Look at this power boost. We can clean up more than a gig of RAM. Flashlight. Oh, wow. I already broke the rules. That app's going to freak out at me. The flashlight is an app. It's an app called Flashlight. That's before it was just built into the shade. That's funny. Hey, check it out. Do you guys notice a difference in screen quality at all? Hold on, let me turn the brightness up. Oh, it is up. Okay, let's see. Hey, this does get brighter. They're the same. It's like I can't see any difference at all. Let's play Madden NFL 25. Oh, the minute you touch the button, it's like, I don't know if I can open. Oh, dude, EA Sports. It's opening. See, screw you, ChatGPT. If I can open a video game, why can't I open you? Your birth month and year? It's Nunya 1993. Oh, that's actually the year I was born. I can't tell them that. 1975. Madden 26 mobile, baby. Something went wrong. Oh no! I was so convinced it was at least gonna load to the menu. Nope. All right, I'm in. Let's play a video. Yeah, it works. Well, that's pretty quick and responsive too. What about comments? That's like... That's not any worse than modern TikTok. I haven't liked my own TikTok, so I gotta go back and fix that. I liked that one and that one. Nobody liked that ad, including me. Sorry, guys. You gotta make money somehow. Am I the first person to ever watch TikTok on an Asus Zenfone 2? Maybe. Not because people don't use 10-year-old phones, because People don't use this 10-year-old phone. Now you might be wondering, well, hold on a minute. Did TikTok spend a bunch of time and energy and money compiling an x86 version of TikTok Lite? No. And that's because Android apps in general are not compiled to the architecture that they run on. They're not compiled to ARM machine code either. Android apps, by and large, are written in Java, and then they're compiled to bytecode, and then they run inside of Android's runtime experience, or ART. And that takes the bytecode, it compiles it to whatever your processor speaks, be it ARM, x86, or something else, doesn't matter. And it just works, theoretically. And that's kind of Java's whole thing, right? They say, write once, run anywhere. And Android is a really good example of where that actually works. I mean, I'm running TikTok Lite, an app that came out years after this phone was entirely discontinued, and it works fine. And pretty much all apps worked fine, not just today, but back then. Really the only hiccup and exception that theoretically caused issues were apps built in the NDK, or Native Development Kit environment. This was C++ code that was written for specialized performance applications like benchmarks, some games, extremely low latency environments like audio processing. But even then, Intel built their own Houdini binary translator, kind of like Rosetta for Mac, that converted ARM instructions to x86 on the fly. So basically the opposite of Rosetta. And was there a performance penalty? Sure, but it worked. And in practice, reviewers of this phone 10 years ago really struggled to find any apps that wouldn't run, and most of them generally ran really well. The same could not be said today, because apps are designed for way more memory resources and greater storage and faster processors than what this has. But all of these compatibility fears that happened when this phone came around, I mean, they were theoretical. They weren't real. This phone was totally fine. ChatGPT's up. Even ChatGPT is fine. Do you believe that I am talking to you right now from an Asus Zenfone 2? Wow, the keyboard is struggling. I mean, it's possible. The Asus Zenfone 2 was a pretty popular device when it came out. That's proof that LLMs don't know anything. Little tab here, I guess that makes sense because there's no SIM tray. Which means removable back cover, which obviously means removable battery. Wait, maybe not. Maybe not. Here's the battery on this side, and on this side, here's a water indicator sticker. But this whole plastic chassis with the SIM tray goes over the top of the battery assembly. So it's not a removable battery, at least not without quite a bit of work. That's kind of a dick move. Don't like that at all. Come on, Asus. So, what became of these promising devices, you ask? Well, I bet you can guess. Dell killed the entire Venue lineup just 2 years after launch, never delivering on the promised Android updates, and Asus immediately pivoted back to Snapdragon chips for the Zenfone 3. And this is gonna come as a shock, but no new partners wanted to join in on the fun. Even with Intel's massive device subsidies, nobody wanted to bet their product lineup on x86 Android, especially given that Intel was struggling to pump out a new SKU every couple of years when Qualcomm was launching a new flagship SoC every 6 to 9 months. In April 2016, Intel officially canceled all future mobile chip development and laid off 12,000 employees. It was game over. So, what's the moral of the story? I don't know, man. Because Intel didn't just miss mobile, they had it twice. They owned the most advanced ARM designs in 1997 and then threw them away. Steve Jobs literally hands them the iPhone opportunity in 2005 and they say, no thanks. These devices, I mean, they are fascinating relics of alternate history. They did prove that Intel could build competitive mobile chips. They just couldn't build a time machine. By the time Intel got serious, ARM had already won. The ecosystem had locked in, and no amount of clever engineering or free money could change that. So I guess the question becomes, would Intel be better off today if they had said yes? I suppose we'll never know, but it's also hard to imagine them being worse off than they are now. For a company that once defined American tech dominance, watching them trip over their own shoelaces for a decade straight, I mean, that's not just a miss, man. That's tragic. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy.